Dun, 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 dun. Welcome, everybody. This is an open discussion with C3 Films. My name is Chris, and this is.
Cheryl.
And today we are going to be talking about Star Wars Visions, the anime thing that's come up.
Series.
Excuse me, what?
Series.
Series, thank you, that's come from Disney Plus. Series of shorts, 9 episodes, all standalone, basically just one story. They don't continue, but they're absolutely great. And we're not gonna get too much into specifics about the individual episodes, but we're basically going to just do an overall feeling about them. But there is a good chance that we will get into spoilers here. So if you haven't seen the individual episodes, go and check them out. Each individual episode's pretty short. The max is like 20 minutes long, and I think the lowest is like 10 or 11 minutes. But I'm gonna go ahead and turn on these lights, and then we're gonna go ahead and get right into it.
So I'm just going to go ahead and say we are definitely going to do some spoilers here because I really, really, really want to talk about the first episode of the series because it blew my mind. It took my breath away.
Oh man, see, so all right, so here's what we're gonna try to do then. So we have the first episode that you want to talk about. I want to talk about at least a little bit episode 5, and then maybe briefly mention episode 8. So let's go ahead and I before we get into specifics, let me just ask you, in general, how did you feel about the series as a whole?
I feel like I think I didn't like it as much as you did. Sad to say, it's definitely not as good as Mandalorian. But I liked the idea of, seeing the Star Wars universe in the style of anime. I know, like, those are two of your biggest passions. But I think, like, it started off so strong with that first episode. And then after that, it just kind of felt like kind of okay. Like, there was not really any other episode that, like, really stood out to me as like whole stories, or like whole episodes where I thought like this is really good. But rather, like, there are some episodes where I'm like, well, I didn't really like that, but I really like this. And like some things had some strong stuff in it, but the only one that I really felt like in total, like as a whole, was really, really good was that first one.
Yeah, I agree with you. When I first started, I was like blown away, and I couldn't believe how good that first episode was. And then when we continued, I remembered thinking that I wasn't really a fan of the second episode. And going on, I'm a fan of Studio Trigger and Production IG, which are two of the studios that were doing different shorts here. Studio Trigger is known for anime such as Kill la Kill, Tengen Toppa, Gurren Lagann, and Production IG primarily known for things like Ghost in the Shell. They also did Psychopaths, and these are really top notch anime studios. So I was looking to see what they would produce. Episode 3 is a Studio Trigger episode that plays out like Kill la Kill in space, and it was very underwhelming. And I prefer the second episode that they did, which was episode 8. No, excuse me, episode 7, I believe. But was as I was going through the episodes one by one, I had a similar feeling with you where I was just like, this is okay, that's all right, that's whatever. Out of 9 episodes, I actually only really loved 4, or maybe it's more like I really liked 4 and I loved that one, that is the first episode. But they all had great animation and stuff like that. But the storytelling, like you said, was it had varying degrees of quality across the 9 episodes.
Yeah, definitely would agree. If you were just like, I mean, there's a lot of components in filmmaking and animation that you could focus on, in terms of like what's good and what's not good. So if you would just to like look at only story, I would say that like not really any of them are very strong in storytelling. Even that first one is pretty simple. But they are very short, so they do have to be very simple.
Yeah,
But that doesn't mean you can't have an amazing story for a short film.
that's true.
And I think that that was somewhat lacking in all of them. There were
Yeah, I agree.
some that were creative, but I think that like when you look at stuff like Mandalorian, where the storytelling is so different from the original uh, movies, that because it's not about Jedi, right? It's and even Rogue One, it's not about Jedi. We didn't really have anything like that, and like all 9 episodes were about Jedi, pretty much.
I noticed that too. It almost felt like a bid from a bunch of animation studios to try and be able to do the next animated Star Wars show. And like they almost like one of those contests where they give you a list of criteria and say make a thing, but everyone has the same criteria and then people make it in different ways. And it's like you have to have Jedi, there have to be lightsabers, and if someone has to say I have a bad feeling about this, go. And that's that's essentially what a lot of this stuff felt like. But that being said, I do feel like there are two standout episodes, maybe three, that are the strongest in terms of concept or story, maybe not both. And that to me would be the first episode, which I want to start talking about, and also episode 5 and episode 8. So let's go ahead and let's jump into just briefly talking about what you felt about the first episode and maybe why you liked it so much.
Well, first of all, I was like kind of down for it being black and white.
God, yes.
Like that was just so like such a great choice, and like it's not just black and white, right? Because there is color, but the color only comes from lights, and when you have lightsabers and such in it, it makes like a lot of it stand out. And it's not like the only thing that has color is the light itself, like the light source, but you also get like the reflection, like the light in the person's eyes, that the light is glowing from the sword and reflecting on their face and stuff like that. And I think that was just such a great choice to really emphasize light by making it black and white.
Yep.
So that's like one thing. I guess like the other thing is the lightsaber fight. I really like the lightsaber fight. It was very episode 3 esque. They almost kind of copied it, I think, but for a short film, I think it was really cool. I think the umbrella lightsaber was really cool. So there's just like there's just so much to unpack in that one little episode.
Yeah, it's great because I remember when I watched the episode 3, which was the Studio Trigger episode where they were in space with the twins. And the moment that they start fighting in space and no one's just instantly dying, I remember rolling my eyes and being like, okay, this is dumb. But when I saw that umbrella lightsaber, I didn't immediately go, this is dumb. I was like, this is kind of cool. And then they even had a practical way for how it worked because she actually was able to slide it out of the umbrella and then it was a regular lightsaber so she could be more practical with it for a one-on-one fight. So the aesthetic of that also has a samurai that literally pulls out a lightsaber as if it's sheathed in a katana, which when you know Star Wars, you don't need a sheath for it because it sheathes itself. But still, for the visual and the aesthetic, because they're kind of mixing Japanese culture and samurai with Star Wars and the time of the Empire, you're you're able to let your imagination at least for me, you're able to let go a little bit and allow for the insanity because everything else is just so well handled. And for whatever reason, I didn't feel that same way when I watched episode 3 um, of this series, and I'm not entirely sure why, but I feel like the aesthetic also worked better for me for this first episode because that the art style and the characters looked cool and both of and then also and we'll oh my god, there's so much to talk about with this first episode, but yeah, just the aesthetic really worked for me and I liked the villain as well. The villain seemed cool to me, and yeah, like I mean, how did all that kind of wash on you?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's just like they established the world. It still felt like Star Wars, but it also felt like it had a Japanese twist. And it was still acceptable. It was kind of like a different planet, right?
Yeah.
And I just love the creativity with the sabers, because like we every different movie has a different kind of saber, right? In the original series, we just had saber. And then in the prequel sequels, or the prequel trilogy, we had double sided saber. And then the we don't have to worry about the those poor designed ones in the
Cross guard.
yeah. Anyway, but now we have like more playing around with the design of a saber. We have that umbrella saber, and then we also have the sheath, right? Because also there was this part where he the sheath also has a saber on the other side.
Right.
So that was really cool too. Like you have to be really creative to think of different ways to make a lightsaber.
Right. And also that still like holds within the acceptable nature of what Disney will allow you to get away with.
Yeah.
Um, but talking about the storytelling, so this is one of the three episodes I feel like the storytelling is the strongest, even if overall the storytelling may not be as great as it could be for a short. The There's a lot of storytelling that happens through visuals. So when we first meet the samurai guy, we think he's a Jedi. But then the way we know he's not a Jedi is when he unsheathes his lightsaber, it's red. And so now you have a bunch of new questions. So what is this? And so now you have this fight, which is actually two Sith, quote unquote, fighting each other. And so everything else about the story surrounding it is very simple. It's about saving this village, whatever. But when he beats the Sith person, that's when the twist at the end of the episode, the end of this particular short happens, where he opens his jacket and you see just a collection of kyber crystals that are all red, which basically implies that this character is a Sith hunter. And that in itself is kind of interesting. But it's not like the show, or excuse me, the episodes explicitly tells you that he is, but it allows you to think on it and wonder about it based off of what it's visually showing you on screen. And that's good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good for storytelling, I think.
I think definitely this episode had the least amount of dialogue in all of the
Yeah.
episodes, which is what makes it one of the strongest ones, because they, like you said, the visual storytelling is really good. And I think you can kind of tell where they draw their inspiration from, besides Star Wars, and that's Kurosawa.
Oh, of course.
Right, of course. And it
Which
really
also Star Wars is
shows.
inspired by Kurosawa. So
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like it just looks so it just maybe that's why it feels so fitting, right? It feels like it belongs. It feels like it's part of the Star Wars world, because I mean it's just so good. It looks so good and it feels so good.
yeah.
Um
Jedi are basically space samurai anyway, so
yeah, exactly.
but yeah, and so one of other things that stood out to me. So episode 5 is the episode that's done by Production IG, and concept wise, something in there stood out to me, which I thought could be cool, and it made me actually wish that this was something they could have dove into in the movies, because as time progresses, technology will change. So even lightsabers, like we were saying, could change different ways you can make lightsabers. But the hook behind episode 5 is that this is the episode where you have lightsabers that change their color based off of your connection to the force at that specific moment. So historically, you get your kyber crystal. It has a color. You put it in your lightsaber. That's your color forever until you get a new lightsaber, and then the color can change. We have seen that, but it never can change in the moment. And this had this really cool thing of having this colorless lightsaber that would slowly gain color for this character as her connection with the Force grew. And I really enjoyed that as a concept. These people were given their lightsabers immediately, and they were immediately red because they were all Sith.
Yeah, I think that was a cool moment to, for a short film even, to give that character of the little girl, who is the main character, a really good visual way to show character growth in a really
Yeah,
short time. Like that's such a good shortcut kind of thing. Like it's so simple but so effective.
it
Um,
is.
and I think that I guess like my problem though with it is like one thing I didn't understand is you know her dad the Smith turns the lightsaber on and it's blue. So that just tells us like oh he's a Jedi. And then you think, well, maybe he's just really connected to the Force. But then he pushes the blast away, so we know that he is a Jedi. So my question is, like, why didn't he just take a lightsaber and then, like, take those guys out? Why did he have to die? That part didn't make sense to me. Like, I feel like, yes, they needed, like, her, like, you know, the girl to go off on her own so she can have her arc and everything. But that part just, like, it didn't make sense to me, and it kind of took me out of the story a little bit.
Yeah,
But I will say that the concept, this new concept that they're bringing in, was a really good idea. I really like the creativity there, and I really like the reveal, like you said, where everyone had a red lightsaber. And I really, really like that there was one character that had a purple lightsaber.
yes. But the funny thing about that is that character's lightsaber also was red at first, and it slowly started turning purple. And like I had to rewatch the scene. I was like, wait, is
Yeah.
that lightsaber changing color? And it was red, and it was turning purple while he was actually fighting because he was disconnecting from the dark side. And like he even says, I was being pulled by their dark energy to the dark side, and so now I'm able to be back, and now I have this purple lightsaber. So like I I love that as a concept, and I wouldn't mind seeing it in the future of Star Wars if possible.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
Um,
I mean, oh yeah, sorry, what were you gonna say?
no, yeah, I was just gonna start talking about another episode.
Go for it. Which one?
The one where let's see, what episode was it? I think it was episode 8.
Oh,
Um,
with the sisters.
yeah, with the sisters.
That was the next one I wanted to talk about too.
Yeah,
Okay.
that one was a really pretty solid one for me as well. I think the production design was really good. It was pretty spot on. It looked great. The animation was good. One of the few episodes in the series, for some reason, that had an alien
Main
species.
character, right?
Yeah. Like, hello, Star Wars. I almost feel like it's like they sent off a bunch of people to make, you know, little short films and nobody decided to talk to each other about what they were doing, so they all kind of did the same thing.
Same thing. Yeah, exactly. And I had that same thought where that was one of my criticisms actually was that I didn't feel like I was seeing enough alien main characters. I get that human characters can feel easier to bond to because they look like us. So even in the main Star Wars line, like any of the main Jedi we've seen in the Star Wars movies have always been humans, despite the fact that there have been plenty of Jedi that aren't humans. But I mean, I feel like in a show that's the best time to kind of experiment with it because even characters like Ahsoka Tano are not human. They belong to a different race of people, and she's basically the main character of the Clone Wars, and now is a fan favorite. So it 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 can be challenging in live action, I understand, but in animation, I don't feel like there's an excuse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they were not quite thinking out of the box enough, in my opinion.
Right.
But this one I really thought was good. Like not only like the design, but I think the story was also pretty interesting. I think the characters were really complex, which is
Yep.
really good to have, especially in a short film. And the characters changed. I mean, time
Yep.
passed, but the characters changed, and like that was really cool. I think it was really interesting that they were able to do that in a short film. It kind of
Yeah.
reminded me of Rogue One, just the like the whole design and the way that the characters are.
I see
Um,
that.
yeah, and I think they handled the lore of the lightsaber. Like they weren't Jedi, I guess. Like that's another thing. Like here we have a story. Like all the other ones were about Jedi, but here we have one where no one is a Jedi, and I think that was refreshing.
It was. And so while I love episode 1, episode 8 is actually my favorite episode. And the reason for it is because I like the fact that we have characters that change. While there was a lot of cool visual storytelling in the first episode, in this episode I feel like there was a lot of good character storytelling and character moments. I like the idea that the human sister that we meet as a child and is all like happy go lucky and friendly ends up being someone that wants to be on the side of the empire. But even when you're listening to her arguments, I don't feel like you can immediately just say she's wrong. Like we all know the Empire for what they are because we have a history of Star Wars. But if you take yourself and put yourself in the mind of this character who's trying to industrialize her world, it makes sense that she would want to rely on the Empire even if she doesn't agree with their ways. And so I like the complexity of her argument. I like the fact that she wasn't getting along with the father, but even in the next following scene where she's in the car with her adopted sister says, "I actually understand where our dad is coming from," and they actually have a conversation about it, even though they both disagree. And it's very complex as far as characters interacting, and the action at the end is very well paced. The fight, it looks great. It's awesomely animated. There's an emotional feeling towards it because of the fact that there's two sisters that are now fighting each other after the father gets injured and loses his eye. There's more emotion attached to this story than there is in the first one. So I think that's actually why I kind of found myself loving this one.
Yeah, and to go off that, I think there was a big character change for the father as well, because he first
Yes.
started off as like he didn't
He
like
didn't even want her.
yeah, he didn't want to adopt her, but then he ended up adopting her because of his real daughter. And then like now that they're older, he raised them, and he's like, "You are my daughter. I accept you as my daughter, and I'm giving you the family heirloom."
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess like the only thing I didn't like about this episode is that like she's kind of like Ray, right? Where she just kind of
Oh.
learns how to use the Force all by herself with no training, and she needs a lightsaber. But I'm so tired of that. Like, it's
Yeah.
because they all just make Luke look so bad. I'm sorry.
There's a whole generation of people out there that would argue that Luke didn't have to work for anything, and I don't think they've actually seen any of the original trilogy that shows that Luke actually he was shown training with a lightsaber and getting shot by little robots while Han made fun of him, and he also lost his first fight with the Sith Lord. He actually wasn't awesome until the third movie of that trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah. It only took 3 movies for him to
it only
become a
took three
Jedi.
movies.
So what's like 2 minutes, right?
Yeah.
2 minutes, two
Uh,
movies. I don't know. There's a couple hour difference.
yeah, right. So, like, what I was gonna say is the one weak part for me was the ending, which kind of goes in line with what you're talking about. At first, I was asking myself, how can she even fight this well? But then I thought about it and I said, actually, they've been training. Like, her sister is fighting just fine, and she's not using a lightsaber. So they're a part of this family. You could argue that they do weapons training. So them knowing how to fight, not as surprising. So I thought to myself, okay, I can let that slide. But the force thing, uh, so it's funny. I'm more willing to give this character a pass than Ray, only because they did the anime thing, where we've seen all those shonen animes where you have like the character power up when someone gets hurt, and then they tap into an ability that allows them to win in that moment. I've seen it in an anime, so I like at first it's like, oh yeah, this is just an anime thing, but stopping and thinking about it, you are 100% absolutely right. Um, but as far as the ending goes, my issue is that it doesn't really feel like an end. The rest of this short feels like it's telling this great story about these opposing characters, how a character that like like the human sister accepts this street rat, quote unquote, but then rejects her when they're older. But then it flips, and the father accepts her when he rejected her at first. And then there doesn't feel like there's any real conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
She gets slashed. You think she's dead, which could have been a conclusion. It would have been sad, but it was almost like they were afraid of killing her. So she inexplicably survives a lightsaber, two lightsabers or two weapons that slashed her across the chest in an X formation, and then she flies off. And it felt like, okay, this is fine if this was a series and we're gonna see more episodes, like for another 12 episodes or so. But it felt weird as a short. So as far as the ending goes, that to me was the weakest part about it, but I loved everything else about it.
Yeah, I definitely felt like this episode had so much detail and complexity, like, not just in the characters, but, in the story itself. I feel like that short film could have easily been a movie.
Yeah.
That's how much detail and like stuff they had in there. And like and it was pretty good because they weren't really expositional about it either. Like
Nope.
it's all character driven. So
Yeah. And they even had the emotional moment where the droid got destroyed and you get upset for the droid. You're like, the droid was trying to show you a picture of your family, girl. Like, what you doing? What you doing? Don't hit the droid, don't hit TD. So, and that's actually when the main character got pissed. Now that I'm remembering, it was after the
Yeah.
droid. It wasn't after the father lost his eye. It was after the droid got destroyed.
Right?
Do not, yeah, don't mess with
droids.
Jedi's love their droids. Oh man. So, was there an episode which episode did you like the least? Then is my next question for you.
Oh gosh, probably number 4.
Oh, the episode where nothing happened.
Yeah, it's so boring. And then there's like a wedding, and then like you're wondering like who the heck are these people, and you don't really find out to the end, and then you find out that like one is a Jedi, and like, oh shocker, oh Jedi. After seeing a bunch of not Jedi doing not Jedi things, this one mysterious person turns out to be a Jedi. And saves the day.
Yep, of course.
In one very uneventful fight.
Yeah, the only thing I liked about that episode was the fact that the character had a yellow lightsaber. That was it.
Yeah, pretty much. I was like, oh hey, Chris has that.
So I don't know which one is my least favorite, but it's probably either episode 6 or episode 2. And episode 2 I thought was an interesting concept from just the standpoint of seeing more of like, I guess, the universe, and like, hey, there's these people who play in a band, and that's kind of cool. And Joseph Gordon-Levitt did the voice for the character in that episode, but when it got to the singing, I couldn't listen. It was painful.
It was not legit. Good.
I actually at that moment changed it to Japanese just so that I could get through the rest of the song. And it sounds better in Japanese. It still sounds a little rough, but it sounds better in Japanese than it does in English. And I watched the rest of the series completely in English, so that was the only time I did it. And then episode 6, which was basically about the Astro Boy that became a Jedi. There's so much of the story. Yeah, so much of the storytelling there just felt rushed to me. With like some of the cuts and everything. It felt almost experimental. And I could see how somebody might like that, but that particular episode was not for me. Like, I watched that episode and was going to go to bed, and I had to watch another one afterwards because that episode upset me so much.
Yeah, I think those two are more for the kids, but I actually I didn't dislike the Astro Boy one. Because I felt like it was, I just thought it was cute. It was, I mean, it didn't make sense, but, I understood, like, this is more kiddie.
Right.
But I thought it was cute, and I liked his name.
What was his name?
TOB1.
TOB1?
Oh,
TOB1. Wow. I missed that. Okay.
Yeah, there we go. Not so bad anymore, right? But also, I thought the second one was like, while I thought it was like whatever, But I kind of thought it was cool that they brought Jabba in, and that was the only time in all of the episodes where they actually had a character from the movies
Yeah, because
in
they
a
had Jabba and
setting.
Boba.
Yeah, in a setting that that was from the prequels. So
Right. Yeah, that's true. That was pod racing, wasn't it?
yeah, and it wasn't about Jedi.
No, it wasn't. That's true. That was the one, and it's probably the most unique out of them all, right? Because it's about a rock band, and
Yeah,
they're
I
using
mean
a
it's
rock band to save
different.
a life.
It's different. It's not really. I wouldn't say it's really Star Wars, but
Yeah,
it's for kids.
right. They showed Jabba tapping his tail.
Yeah, I give A for effort and being different and trying to think outside the box. That one.
Yeah. I okay. I'll give you that. That's
Yeah,
true.
he even had a
Um,
backstory where like the two characters met. You could see like he had a lightsaber, right? So he had a backstory. Like you can assume that he was a Padawan that escaped and survived, and now this is his new life.
right. He turns his lightsaber into a microphone.
Yeah, although it doesn't quite fall in line with the setting that they chose for the pod racing, because that's before the fall of the Jedi Temple. But anyway, I won't get into that details.
Yeah. No,
These dots don't
exactly.
connect. Um, yeah.
So, all right. Well, we're coming up on time. We've been talking for a little while. I think there's still a lot we could say, but is there anything else that you want to bring up, like in relation to some of the other episodes that we didn't talk about, or want to bring up another point about an episode we already did talk about?
Just one really quick. I was a little fond of episode 7, just because the characters kind of reminded me of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan.
Yuan, yeah,
Yeah, so that one felt like that one sat well with me because of the familiarity of the dynamic between the master and the Padawan. And it just felt like very Star Wars-esque to me. So that's like one of the other ones that I like, besides the three that we talked about that we liked, that was the only other one that I would give some merit to.
yeah. That one. So that was the episode after the Astro Boy one. So I watched that episode before I went to sleep, and I had the same kind of feeling. I actually felt myself get upset when I thought the Padawan was killed, and I went. Part of that is because he's a brown skinned Jedi, and I didn't want him to die. So, but no, it was like I liked the villain that they had in there. I liked the fight. So that one was another kind of fun one. And I mean at this point we've talked about every episode except episode 9. Um, what did you think about that last episode as a final, I guess, accent to the series?
I kind of can't remember the episode, but I wrote that it was okay, that it was about Sith, and why are they leaving? What's the motive? I don't I don't remember what the episode is about, but that's what I
So
wrote.
that was the episode. That was great. That's the episode where you had the princess that was going back to her castle to reclaim her throne, and they had the two guys that were guiding them through all the mountains
Oh yeah.
and everything. And you had the Jedi who was struggling with something, and then ends up accidentally killing her, and then having to bring her back to life using the power of the dark side, which is a little strange considering that's exactly what Anakin wanted, which is why Force healing was like a little iffy to introduce into this universe, but it's fine. And your question of why are they leaving is a great question. Like, so the thing the thing I liked about that episode was that it was a dark ending.
Yeah.
Like it literally ends in all red.
Clearly it wasn't memorable because I completely forgot it.
Yeah, it's super short. It's not one of the best. I probably wouldn't have made that my last episode. I probably would have made episode 8 the final episode if we're
Yeah.
talking about just starting with the bang like episode 1 and then ending off with the bang. I think episode 8 is a much more powerful note to leave off on than the 9th episode, which you didn't even remember.
Yeah. And then one more quick thing, for episode 3, the thing that I hated about I thought it looked really cool, like the art was really cool, but the thing that I really hated was that they were just standing
In
outside in
space?
space.
In space?
Like,
With nothing, like, what?
what is it? Like, I get it's a cartoon, but that doesn't mean you can defy the laws of Star Wars physics.
Yes, this is Studio Trigger basically just doing a Kill la Kill or Gurren Lagann in space.
Like, you can't just make stuff up. I mean, you can make stuff up, but, like, do it better than that.
Yeah, like I said, I can buy a umbrella lightsaber more than I can buy these guys fighting in space with no spacesuits.
Yeah. No, but see, the thing that's really dumb is that at the very end, the droid that is, like, loyal to the girl, the girl twin, he was wearing a helmet. The droid.
I didn't know.
I was like, what am I watching? I don't.
That was one I found very underwhelming too, and that was one I had like high hopes for. But hey, Studio Trigger made up for it with episode 7, so we're good. Wow, there are 9 episodes of this, and there are 9 main trilogy movies. Do you think that is a coincidence?
Interesting. Nah.
All right, so that we've gone on a little while here, but whenever we do these Star Wars talks, we always go on for a while. But that's what we thought about Star Wars Visions. It's kind of a mixed bag. There are some episodes we loved, some episodes we thought were okay, and a few episodes that we just didn't enjoy at all. But what about you guys out there? Have you guys given Visions a look? Have you watched any of the episodes? Which ones are your favorites? Are some of the ones we hated your favorites, or some of our favorites ones that you hated? Whatever you thought about it, comment below. Let us know. And while you're down there, if you give us a like, share, subscribe. Even if you don't, though, I have been Chris, and this has been
Cheryl, and we'll see you all next time.